Hey folks, I'm Mike, and we're nearing the end of the Chad Kapper interview series. Tonight or today, what day is it? I don't know. Tonight or today's episode is Chad Kapper's origin story. And this one I think is the one that I'm perhaps the most excited about because there's just a lot of FPV history in here. Now, there's a lot of Chad's history, but there's a lot of FPV history as well. And we carry it from Chad graduating high school, actually Chad in high school, all the way up to the inception of Rotor Riot. If you guys want to hear more about the Rotor Riot years, let me know. Maybe Chad will come back on. But this one, I will tell you, his portion is 38 minutes long. You probably want to listen to this on 2x if you can. But it is truly a great, great episode, and I think you're going to enjoy it. Thanks a lot. Bye. So, all right. So let's move on. I have a ton of questions for you.
Okay.
And a lot of them revolve around Rotor Riot as a business. Mm-hmm. There's the whole Tyler Brennan just invested in the company and is now half owner or some share therein. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what sparked this conversation to begin with. I put out a video yesterday just reacting to that, saying, I think this is a great move for Rotor Riot because it gives you guys capital to work on your production. Mm-hmm. And it gives Tyler a voice. And I think that Tyler having a voice is a really great thing. Mm-hmm. And I think having a voice in general is a really great thing. But tell me, what's the Chad Kapper origin story?
Oh, wow. You just made a big leap there. I was on the path, and then you transported to another planet.
I did make a big leap. We're going to come back around.
Okay.
But I think we need some perspective. Like, you haven't just been doing Rotor Riot. There's a whole history here that maybe some of the people that are new to the hobby have no idea about.
Yeah, well, first off, about your video, I thought it was excellently made. I didn't even get it. I'm sorry, I never actually commented that because I forget why. I got distracted or something. But Drew sent me the video, and he was impressed with it. I watched it. I was like, wow, that's really insightful and more eloquent than I would have put it. So, there might be a couple of little inaccuracies here and there.
I have a few things wrong, yeah.
But it's definitely the spirit is there, and I think you really nailed the spirit of it, and better than I would have. So kudos.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
So back to your question on did you say the origins?
The origin story of Chad Kapper. I mean, and you feel free to start where you want.
You know what I'll do? I'll just back way up to high school, and then I'll cruise through it really quickly, and then you can back up and hit on the points that interest you. So in high school, I wanted to go to art school, and I wanted to be an animator for Disney. I was a huge Disney fan. I even worked at the Disney store and, wore one of those cardigan sweaters and, greet people in the mall. And yeah, can you imagine that? And I wanted more than anything to be an animator. And then, I kind of realized what that meant, that you actually had to sit down and just draw, frame after frame. And I was like, I like drawing, but maybe not the same thing over and over. And, so I started looking into like computer animation and got my feet wet on that in high school, which keep in mind, this was 91, I graduated. But I had taken a vocational course in CAD, computer-aided drafting. So this was when we had XT and AT computers, that you had to have a math coprocessor in order to run CAD, AutoCAD. So it was the very early days of that. And I found out that what we were learning on the version of CAD, it actually had a version of AutoCAD 3D. And our classes were very self-running, so I asked the teacher, if I could explore 3D, and he's like, well, if you finish up your work on what you're assigned, you can go ahead and do that for extra credit. So I totally got into that and did my first 3D model of a maze and a little animation going through it, and it was super crude and rudimentary. And then I modeled a cannon, and it was very basic, but it got my feet wet. But when I did not get accepted to art school, which I shot pretty high, I wanted to go to Cal Arts. That was the best school for Disney, and that's where they recruited their artists from. And I thought that's what I want to do. I don't know. It was kind of like all or nothing. I was like, screw it. I didn't get accepted to the best school, so I wasn't going to go. And I went into the Marine Corps. And at that time, it was during Desert Storm. I expected I'd be deployed. After I got through infantry training, yes, I went in infantry. They stopped sending troops, and I joined the reserves because I had a lot of piss and vinegar, and I just wanted to do something and fight for my country. And I was pissed that I didn't get to the school I wanted to go to, and I always had a hard time learning anyhow, unless it was something I was interested in. So I practically failed the classes that I wasn't interested in and aced the classes that I was. But my GPA wasn't very good, and I barely graduated. So I actually failed government, had to take it again. And barely made it. But so I've always had a hard time learning. I learn my own way. I have a hard time learning traditional ways. So when all that happened, and I had come back home, and I was going to my reserve center, and I had met my wife, and when I met her, everything else just went away. Like, friends, everything, and like pretty much just spent every day with her after I met her. And fast forward, floundering through a number of jobs, electronics store and movie theater, things like that. And I decided I want to work in movies, Hollywood. I want to make videos. And so had no background in that except for, computer aided drafting. So I ended up leveraging what knowledge I did have because I worked at a stereo shop, and I was able to get a job out in Burbank, California, doing custom home theaters and audio systems. And so we got married, moved out to Burbank. It was in 1995. My wife was 19 years old. I was 22. And she was 19, never been really away from home. And I dragged her all the way on the other side of the country in a town like LA. And it was rough for her. She did some extra work, like she's in the background and, some TV shows and that. But I liked my job, but I was just trying to get close to that scene and like get into it somehow. And before I could even get that far, she was done. It was about a year later, and she's like, "I'm moving back to Ohio with or without you." And I thought, well, you are everything to me, so I might as well go with you. And so we moved back to Ohio, and I told her, I said, I was really working towards something. So if I move back to Ohio, I need to do something else because, like, I feel like I took this to a very high level, that particular niche of a profession. I didn't want to come back to Ohio and do like smaller systems and and things like that. I was so a friend of mine was talking to me even before I left about opening a paintball store because he ran a paintball field and I used to go play paintball there all the time. And so I went and I managed his store. He was funding it and I ran it. And my first while I was there, it was really slow every morning. Like people didn't start coming in until about 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So from 9 to 2, it was always dead. And I went out without my wife's knowledge and I bought a computer to teach myself 3D animation because there was some software out for about $300 called True Space by Caligari. And it was available for a home computer in 1995. And I bought a Toshiba Infinia 333 megahertz Pentium. And I spent every morning, I go to Borders and I would buy books and I'd take them to the office where I had my computer, and every morning I would just go through tutorials until I could figure out how to do animations, and I would do logo animations. Well, a local video production company hired me. It was just one guy, but he was a company, and he hired me to work for him, and I did these logo animations. And while I was there, I got to learn to shoot and edit. And keep in mind, this was the editing then was tape. So we used a Grass Valley editor, and it was tape to tape, and we didn't actually, it wasn't cutting the tape, but it was 2 decks to a third deck, and you do all the pre-roll edits and all this stuff. And oh boy, yeah,
like
looking back, I could never edit like that again. But I got to learn just about every discipline in a little bit of everything by working there. So I produced my very first video myself with his help, and it was called Splat Time, and it was a paintball video, and it was all about the sport and hobby of paintball. So what's funny is if YouTube existed then, it would have been a great YouTube video. But at that time, I was able to release it on VHS. And since I had a relationship with National Paintball Supply, who we bought all our paintball equipment through, they carried the video and would sell it to paintball stores around the country. And I sold about 800 copies. So that was kind of my first real production that was mine. And shortly after that, I thought, I'm gonna start my own company. So I sold my Jeep and put the money into a computer and a camera and a tripod and a light and a microphone, and started making cable TV commercials, super cheap. I mean, I'd make commercials as low as $300, and it was a lot of work, and but it was fun. And I had an edge on a lot of other companies because I could do 3D animation. So I could do the same crappy video they could do, except I could do a really cool 3D logo. So that gave me, kind of a leg up. So did that and started my company, Stonecap Productions, which a lot of people may or may not know is named after my son. His name is Christian Stone Kapper. So my wife said, "Hey, why don't we call it Stonecap?" I'm like, "Great, let's go make some money." And the first year in business, I made, I think, if I remember, it wasn't quite $100,000, but it was about $97,000 dollars in the first year. Now that was revenue, but my costs were very low because it was mostly just labor and the initial equipment that I bought. Which my initial investment was somewhere around $17,000. So my mind was blown because before that, all the jobs, even running the paintball store, the most I ever made in a year was maybe $20,000, something like that. So to go from roughly $20,000 to almost $100,000 in a year's time was just blew my mind, but I was hooked. I'm like, I am an entrepreneur. And so just kept growing that. And over the next, 15 years, just kept growing it. That was 98. And then I started Flite Test in 2010. By that point, I had 15 employees and the company pretty much ran itself. And I decided I wanted to, I wanted to get into a hobby, so I got into radio control planes, and I got into it through a $29 Air Hogs plane that you could buy at Walmart. And my son and I bought those and flew the crap out of them. And when we broke them and they just wouldn't fly anymore, we go buy 2 more and just fly them to death. And I'm like, okay, I got to step this up. So then I go to.
So let me stop you right there.
Yeah.
How old is your son? How old is your son at this point?
In 2010, I have to do some math here. He's 21 now, so he would have been 12, I think.
Okay.
So wait, he was born in 98.
My kids are now.
Yeah, so he was 12. He was born in 98, the same year I started the company.
So this is I know from my kids, the fact that their dad flies drones and takes them out to fly drones I think
as a kid, I wish that my dad would have done stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad was still a great dad, don't get me wrong. But, I was always interested in like RC and computers and all this other stuff. My dad didn't have that background.
Right.
So I'm sure that your son at that time, that was probably the best thing ever.
Oh, ever since then, we've had a lot of great milestones. I mean, heck, we got to go to Chernobyl together, and
That's amazing.
At some point he's always had a slight interest in RC, but I think when your dad's really into something, you're kind of just naturally not as much into it, So he always had more of an interest in video production and video games and stuff like that. But so 2000. Well, actually, this was about 2009, late 2009 or early 2010, and hold on, sorry. So we flew the crap out of those. Then I am such the cliche person. Like, people think that I'm all original in that because of creating certain things, but I'm really just a very cliche person. I went out. Actually, my wife bought it for me. She bought me the I don't even know what brand it was, but I requested it. It was an EDF jet. It was what was it? It was an It wasn't F-16. I don't remember which one it was. It was an F-16. No, it wasn't F-16. Oh, I don't remember. I can't remember which model it was. It didn't last long. I pretty much took it out, launched it. It went up, stalled, and just disintegrated. And it was $150. It was, it was a cheap. What was that? What was that company that they had a bunch of YouTube videos? Banana Hobby, I think, was where we got it. And so then my heart was just broken. My stomach was up in my throat. And honestly, we were at a point in time where $150 was not, we spent that much on dinner. So it wasn't like, but growing up, we were very poor, so I'm very frugal. And even though, my wife might have expensive taste, I don't like spending a lot of money on things. I'm very, very, I like to spend just enough to get me the experience that I want. And anything more than that feels very wasteful. And, and I'm very cheap when it comes to stuff like that. So, so I was really torn, but I also am very competitive with myself. Like, I don't let myself fail or stop. I feel like you only fail when you give up. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to let this beat me. So I ended up going out and I got a J3 Cub, which is actually still in my garage. It's barely held together with tape and hot glue and all that stuff. Right. But it was docile enough that I could kind of get my feet under me and figure it out. And then from there, it was every week. I was going into the hobby shop almost every day, just looking for something to buy. And then when I bought it and I flew it, I wanted to upgrade it. And then after I upgraded it as far as I could, I bought the next thing. And I was just obsessed. And I went and I was on YouTube and I was watching every video I could. And there really wasn't a lot out there. The best thing that existed at that time was Dave Superpowers. He would do these scratch builds and experiments, and he was awesome. And he was very inspirational to me. And then I came across David Vindestall and his tricopter and his Twin Star, and I wanted to fly FPV more than anything. And David had these FPV videos above the clouds, and I'm like, that I want to do that.
What? Give me a date reference here, or a time.
That would have been 2000, early 2010 is when it was spring.
And so, Flite Test has or has not begun?
No, Flite Test started the first episode, as you know it. It was October 2010. Over the summer of 2010, I had some experimental episodes that were just me trying things, but eventually I turned all those off and then redid it, and that became Flite Test. But prior to all of that, I was flying FPV every morning, every day after I got home from work. I would get home early, just so I could have as much flying time as possible. And as soon as the sun went down, I'd go down in the basement and start building or repairing, and just completely obsessed with it. And because, you know, my background was video, I wanted to merge my profession and my passion, and, you know, do what I could. And that's when, you know, Flite Test was a long process, because I don't even know what it was. It wasn't a concept. It was just like a weird nagging passion of, I want to make content, and I didn't know what I wanted the content to be. So I just started shooting and making stuff, and I would watch it. I would upload it. Some people would watch it. I would look at it, and it wasn't hitting the nerve. I just kept on it, just kept it reiterating and trying different things. And eventually came across Josh Bixler, and Josh Scott's my cousin, and we put them together. And Michael Caminetti was who I had hired to shoot and edit it, and he still is extremely talented. His son has a channel called Toys with Packs. So if anybody's watching this, a little plug for that, because it's an awesome YouTube channel. So we did that, and after releasing so here's what I did. I was just talking to somebody about this yesterday. They said, you know, what kind of money do you invest in a new venture? And I'm like, well, Flite Test, I gave myself a $25,000 budget. I said, I'm going to take this as far as I can on $25,000. And if it's not doing something or positive movement or positive cash flow by that point, then I'll just pull the plug on it. I probably didn't even spend that much. I probably spent less than $10,000 on everything. And after the first episode was released, everybody in the industry called me or emailed me. And
that's awesome.
They wanted to see, you know, hey, what are you doing? Are you taking on sponsors? And then Hobby King got very aggressive and said, we'll sponsor you. We'll sponsor all your episodes. And so that we were off and running even faster than I thought. Like, I expected to just like kind of meander around and try things, and it was within a couple of weeks of the first official episode that, you know, we got a lot of traction. And then fast forward down that path a little bit. Now, I have skipped some other things. Like I have directed a couple feature films.
Sure.
I've worked in the feature film and commercial industry, but these are kind of like probably the more relevant milestones for this.
For this audience.
So, so did that. And eventually Hobby King said, we want exclusivity. We don't want you to take on other sponsorships. We want to be an exclusive sponsor, which to me, I never liked that with my video production company. Having one client be more than 40% of your business is very dangerous, because then they can start controlling your costs and your profit and what you do. So we said, we can't do that. And they gave us an ultimatum. They're like, well, either you do that or we pull out altogether. And I talked to Josh.
What did they represent in terms of your sponsorship at that point? I'm
trying to remember. I don't remember specifically how much of it was them. I know more than 2/3 of it was them, but the most we were pulling in through sponsorships was roughly $30,000 a month. And that was when we had maybe 40,000 subscribers. Like, we didn't even have that many subscribers, but our content was, you know, high quality compared to anything else. So, and we were doing roughly 4 to 6 episodes a month, so about one a week. But we would do, every once in a while, we'd do a bonus episode. And so when that went away, that hurt. You know, that was a pretty, and it wasn't all of that. So let's just say it was probably around 22,000, something like that. But that was massive, because we were going to start making an official business. So during that time, after they had stepped away, I had already purchased a laser cutter, because we made pretty good money our first year, and I had to invested in something. So I bought a laser cutter thinking, oh, we can have fun with this. And so after that, Josh Bixler came up with this idea of, hey, let's do these laser cut kits based on these ideas and designs I have. And it's funny because I looked at it and I'm like, the laser like undercuts the foam, like the foam kind of sucks in from the heat of the laser, and you get these, flappy paper edges. And I'm like, it's not as a clean cut as it could be. People aren't going to like that. And I'm just like, I don't know. Are people going to want to buy a kit when they can just go cut it themselves? And sure enough, people were more than happy to give us $33 for $2 worth of parts. And, it was mostly labor, putting it on the laser cutter, packing them, all that stuff. And we sold, I'm trying to think, the first full month it was something like $22,000 in product.
Wow.
Yeah, foam. And then the next month was like 30, and then it just kept growing slowly and slowly. And then at one point it just got a little too operational, is what I'll call it, for me to be really helpful. I'm a starter. I make ideas real. That's what I'm good at. Once it gets into the growth stage, I struggle because I'm not an operations person. I'm horrible with processes. I'm a bad learner. There's just, it's just not my skill set to grow companies. So at that time, Lauren International came along, and I had been meeting with the CEO, and he was introduced to me from a friend, and we were really just meeting as acquaintances and just like learning from one another. And I looked at him as more of a mentor. And when we were in that situation, he's like, why don't we buy your company, and you can come work at Lauren as an executive, and we'll fund your next project. And so I was like, sounds good to me.
That's great.
I'm still going to be close enough that I can, be involved, even if it's in the back end. And I can go start something else. So from there, and feel free to cut as much of this out as you want. So I'm trying to be. I said I was going to do it quickly, but I think I'm still giving too much detail. So I, at that point, I had this project that I wanted to do with David called Rotor DR1 as a fictional series that we would do 10 episodes on YouTube, and we would release one at a time each week. And we would get audience feedback, and we would incorporate that feedback into the next episode, and it would shape itself more organically. And it's about a boy and his drone looking for his father in a post-apocalyptic future. And hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And we got through it, and we finished it up. And once all the episodes were done, we made it into a movie and got it distributed. And right now it's on iTunes and Amazon, and people can go buy it right now if they want.
Yeah.
And it's my son starred in it, and it's probably it's amazing to be able to have that to look back on. But it was so creatively and from a pioneering standpoint, like pioneering a new filmmaking method, was pretty amazing. But financially, it was a failure. And that's so bittersweet, because the process and, the people that we worked with, and, the result of what we were trying to accomplish, like there was so much progress in a very positive way. But, we missed some key elements and, some basic filmmaking things, 101. And it just didn't work like it was supposed to, and we lost a lot of money. So I had to decide, okay, well, what am I going to do next? And while I was trying to figure that out, this drone racing was becoming a thing. This was about 2014, 2015. And I thought, oh, this is really interesting. I've always loved multi-rotors. You know, even at Flite Test, I had my own line called Rotor Bones, which was pieces, parts you could make multi-rotors and configure them in different ways. So I started traveling around to different events. I went to my first real drone racing event. I think it was the first one was in Austria, and it was put on by Aerial GP. Oh my gosh, am I saying that right? Rio Rex. It was his league.
Now, at this point, while you're looking that up, I'm going to ask you a quick question. Are you still on board with Lauren at this point, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So yeah, I was still working at Lauren and trying to decide, you know, what's my next venture. And, you know, traveling around, doing a lot of research and really trying to understand, is this a new movement? You know, what's going on? And I really believed, I was like, okay, this is going to be a thing. And Nick from DRL, he called me before it was DRL and saying, you know, hey, my background was in, what is it? It's the Ironman race things. The Tough Mudder, I think, is what was his background. And he said, I'm going to do this drone racing league. And he knew me from Flite Test and wanted to pick my brain. And I don't know if he was just trying to get information or wanted me involved or what, but I was kind of sniffing around that concept as well. So I was like, well, yeah, I'm going to start a league too. And, you know, so but the thing was I knew I was doing something, and that was the closest way I could define it. So just kept exploring, and then eventually seeing, you know, people emerge like Chad Nowak and Steele Davis. And at some point, it was over that summer of 2015, I met Scott Refslin, and he, you know, he had his drone worlds and drone nationals, and Chad Nowak won drone nationals. And I met Scott at Interdrone in 2015. And Scott asked me if I wanted to go to Hawaii and help them scout for drone worlds. And he wanted to make a promo video, and he asked if I would do it. And I thought, okay, well, I'm already looking for people. So, you know, and he's going to bring all these pilots, that I already know half of them, and I get to meet some of the others. So it'll be a good scouting session where I can try people out and, you know, see who's who and, you know, how they are on camera. And went on that trip and got to meet Steele and Chad. And I already knew Carlos from Flite Test. I hadn't met him in person, but he was on the show at some point when I wasn't there, but we knew who each other were. And then I had spoken to Chad Nowak prior to that trip, but Steele I met on the trip, and Tommy I met on the trip. And there was Kent Diedrichsen was there as well, and Juz70, you know, Justin from Australia, he was there. And as far as multi-rotor pilots, well, and then Tony Cake as well, and then Tim Nilsson from Get FPV, they were all there. And we had a great time, and it was pretty amazing to, you know, scout for this. And then I had shared with the guys, you know, that I was looking to do a show. And after we all went back home, Steele and Tommy had called me and said, hey, how serious are you about wanting to do the show? And I'm like, pretty serious. So Steele suggested, he's like, well, how about, you know, me, Tommy, Carlos, and Chad, and, you know, how's that? And I'm like, great, let's book a trip. So I booked a trip for all of us to meet in LA, and we did our first round of episodes. And that was November-ish, and then we actually released the first episode towards the end of January. It took a lot of kind of like shooting and figuring things out to get it right, but once we released the first set of episodes, it kind of locked in, and that's history.
Yeah, it is.
And actually, a lot
it's
has
funny that
happened
you
since
mentioned
then too.
I mean, it has. I want to back you up just a little bit. About 2016 is when I started getting involved in FPV. Well, I got involved in. I just built a drone. I went into a buddy's garage, and I said, "Hey, what's that over there?" And he's like, "Well, that's the drone that I started that I never finished." And I was like, "I'll trade you a computer for it." And it was a DJI flame wheel. I actually
Nice.
the DJI flame wheel with a KK2 controller.
Ooh.
And I have no idea what kind of ESCs these are, and it's some Sunny Sky motors.
I wonder if that's. I'm betting it's not even a DJI. I bet it's the Hobby King knockoff.
Oh yeah, no, this is not. Yeah, this is not in any way.
No, I mean the arms, because
the arms, yeah.
They were because if it has Sunny Sky motors on it.
Yeah, I mean the arms are so bad. Every time that thing touched the ground, it would break. And then I got tired of flying that line of sight. I was like, man, I wonder if there's a way I can do this better. And happened across Chad Nowak's Hawaii Balls video. And that was that someone had already cast the line, and I had the hook in my mouth.
Yep.
And I watched the Hawaii Balls video, and it set. And that was it. I mean, there was gross amounts of money spent after that trying to pursue getting into this hobby. Anyways, so just an aside that, I've seen some of the video. I don't know that I saw your video that came out of that trip, but I saw some of the other
I
ones,
never actually ended up making
one.
Okay. It's a long story as to, what happened. There's even a lot of behind the scenes drama on that stuff. It was I mean, every move that I've made that has been substantial, where it's gotten a lot of notoriety or attention, 10 people come out of the woodwork saying that was my idea and you stole it, and but the thing is, even if it was your idea, it's not about the idea, it's about executing it. You gotta do something. Like, if you think that nobody's idea is the only one that has that idea, somebody in the world has that idea. It just it depends on who makes it first, who does it. And sometimes you can have a great idea and they can have a bad idea, but they execute the bad idea well and it does well. I mean, Facebook is a perfect example. Facebook is not a wonderful idea. Like, it was just well executed.
Yeah.
So it's just, that's how it works. So I want to be respectful of people, but I also, want to tell an accurate story.
Yeah. So this is into the 2016. From there, it moves into the Rotor Riot era.
Yeah, no. So 2015 was Hawaii. 2015. So it was January,
Hawaii, and then
so
then you guys got together in November of 2015.
Correct. Yes.
And then in the beginning of 2016, that's when Rotor Riot really formed. That
was when we released the video. We were shooting in November.
Okay.
So
what's funny to me is that by the time I found you guys, I think you maybe had 20,000 subs at that point. And it just seemed like, oh my God, these guys have been here forever.
Well, we had 8,000 subs before we even released the video. Just because of the lineup.
Yeah.
I mean, it was, all the guys had, I don't know, 5 to 10,000 subs. Yeah, other than Carlos, he had a bunch. I forget what he was up to, but at that point, Flite Test was probably 500,000.
Okay.
So it, between everybody, there was a lot of notoriety there. So we had a good jump start.
Hey folks, I'm glad that you could watch that. I'm glad that you could come along for this journey. Next up, we have me asking Chad, I think, what is perhaps the most difficult question for him to answer. That'll come out very soon. But I would love if you could like, subscribe, comment, do all that good stuff. And I will see you next time. Talk to you later. Bye.